Hello, it's Stuart, the unrepentant atheist, and I just want to make a few comments about Alex O'Connor's video with Bishop Robert Barron, Roman Catholic, and they had a discussion about a so-called crisis of meaning, which Alex pointed out that self-help gurus such as Jordan Peterson had a huge following, and perhaps this indicated that there is a crisis of meaning. So, of course, the bishop very quickly agreed with him. Well, obviously affirmed that yes, there is a crisis of meaning, and that it's an empty business, vacuous, as he called it, vacuous, to live life inventing your own meaning, and that essentially we need some kind of fundamental source of meaning in order to make sense of our lives. So Alex kind of countered, saying, well, you know, atheists are living their own meaningful lives. They are creating their own meaning. And the bishop said that what atheists are doing, he said, yes, they are living meaningful lives, but they're intuiting objective values. And even though they won't acknowledge it, these these objective values are effectively coming from God. So, I mean, for example, when I perceive a work of art, there is a higher truth behind that work of art. I'm intuiting it. It's giving me this amazing kind of sense of awe and this feeling. And although I'm not acknowledging that there's anything beyond it, in fact, I am actually intuiting it without realizing that it's actually there. So Alex really posed the question of, you know, meaning can be put another way. A purpose, motivation for getting up out of bed. Everything that motivates us can be traced back to biological concerns and evolutionary forces. And the bishop said that he found this to be very empty, and that he could not believe that the great works of art could be reduced. He rejected reductionism on biological grounds. Everything is effectively motivated by survival. He said that, well, he effectively said that could not be the case, and that he found it empty and depressing. No, actually, it was Alex who said, which I thought was intellectually quite honest, that could it well be that all these great things, works of art, etc., everything we do, can eventually be traced back to survival instinct, no matter how depressing that may well be. It may well be the case. Well, personally, as an atheist, I would say that actually is the case. So the bishop countered that and said, well, he could not believe that, for example, what's this guy's name? Sorry, I've got some notes here. There was Maximilian Kolbe. He said, if you take the example of Maximilian Kolbe, he was a Polish Roman Catholic priest in the Second World War, 1941, I believe. There was an escape attempt at Auschwitz, and the Germans selected out 10 people to die to pay for this escape attempt. And one of the men got on his knees, said, he's got a family, please spare him. So the priest apparently took his place, and the Germans starved him to death. Well, actually, I must say that if you're in Auschwitz, you're not going to survive anyway. And I think that most people who were in Auschwitz probably understood that. But setting that aside, the bishop said that he said you couldn't reduce that to survival instinct, no matter how you spin it. Alex countered that by saying that he said that it might seem unlikely, but that if you take it on a genetic level, that in survival instinct, it comes back to Richard Dawkins' selfish gene. We are trying to protect our genes, and so a father might sacrifice himself for his son. That's quite understandable, and you could go one step further than that by saying, well, in that case, maybe an uncle would sacrifice himself for his nephew, and if you keep moving along, you could see how a Roman Catholic priest might be prepared to sacrifice himself to save somebody who was in a similar gene pool. And then, in a way, I kind of agree with what the bishop said, that Alex was stretching and stretching and stretching to try and accommodate something which seemed to be completely implausible and inexplicable. However, this is my own point of view now. I can explain why the priest did what he did. It's called indoctrination. He'd grown up believing in God. He'd been indoctrinated, and he believed that this was the right thing to do. And that does not mean that there is an ultimate source of truth, or that there is a real God, only that he believed it. It comes back to what a lot of Christians say about, well, you know, the apostles wouldn't have gone through horrible deaths if Jesus hadn't been really resurrected. No, it's about belief. You can believe that something is true and you can die for it, but it doesn't mean that the thing that you believed in is actually true. So coming back to Maximilian Kolbe, survival instinct, if he believed that it was the right thing to do, he'd be thinking in terms of life after death, that if I don't do this virtuous thing now, I may well be judged by God, cast into flames for all eternity. So it can still come back to survival instinct, even looking at it through the lens of Christianity. I think he lost, I think he lost the argument. I actually think that Alex could have done a better job in many of these cases, and he was either going easy on the bishop, or all this business with veganism has kind of addled his brain a little bit, and he's, you know, getting back into the groove. So I didn't really find that very satisfactory. So all the time I found that the priest was making that, I suppose he is a priest, but he's a bishop. He's making appeals to a lot of things for which he had no justification. That when you see a great work of art, there's an objective truth behind it. He's just making these claims. They're just claims. I mean, you might think that you intuit a grand truth beyond, shall we say, a Bach mass, but it doesn't mean that that grand truth is there. Somebody, Jordan Peterson would say, well, it doesn't matter. You need an ultimate motivator. That can either be a real God, one that really exists, or it can be a metaphorical God, one that doesn't exist, which you use. The bishop made the claim that we've all got our, what did he call it? Summum bonum, which I believe is a term coined by Cicero, a classical Roman writer, meaning the highest good. So we've all got our summum bonum, even if we don't realize it, we've got our summum bonum. And the only question is it a true summum bonum or a false summum bonum? And well, I suppose that he would say that his summum bonum is true, and that a Muslim summum bonum is false. Alex did actually say, particularly when they started talking about tracing back motivations all the way back to a prime motivator, that this sounds like an argument for the existence of God. And really, it was, in a way. I felt like I was listening to an argument for the existence of God, based on the argument by purpose or reason, meaning that without a God, life would be meaningless, purposeless and meaningless, and that we need a God to solve that problem. But he never really says what the purpose, that if there is a God and that God provides us with that purpose, he never really says what that purpose or meaning is. Just almost like God is there as a light that we're looking at, and that has a purpose in and of itself, something which is behind everything, and which is this convenient solution to some of these philosophical problems that we've got, and which I acknowledge is a problem, and I don't have an answer to these. I don't have an answer to the problem of meaning and purpose. I kind of go along with Alex, that I think that it can, from what I can see at the moment, it can be reduced to pure survivalism, and As I argued, even for a Christian, it's still all about survivalism, because you're talking about surviving a life after death. That's my view, but I acknowledge that a lot of the philosophical issues I don't have a solution to, but I'm not, unlike the bishop, going to invent one for myself. So he's talking about it being a vacuous business, inventing meaning and purpose. I see him doing exactly the same thing. I see him inventing a God in order to give him meaning and purpose. And I see that as vacuous as well, mindless. I suppose we'd have to disagree. The only thing is that he is adding an entity and creating all sorts of problems and complications. I'm admitting that I don't have answers. I don't have answers to these questions. And that in a way, yes, I'm inventing my own meaning in life, trying to find my own meaning in life, which from what I can gather is all based on survivalism, more or less. And but I'm not adding, and I'm not inventing one thing extra. So he's inventing this grand entity, and he's inventing the meaning that goes with it. He's inventing one thing extra. That's my view. Alex didn't get into that with him, obviously. It was a fairly well-structured podcast. I must admit, I didn't watch all of it. I did watch all of it, but it's beyond the scope of this video that I'm doing to discuss everything that they went through, because for example, they talked about whether Jeffrey Dahmer is in heaven, and I mean, that's for another video. Yeah, so just some final comments to round up on my own opinion on this whole thing about meaning, crisis of meaning. I think one of the things about philosophy is that it's possible to erect a bit of a straw man, create a problem where there isn't really one. This whole thing about meaning and purpose. If you talk about, say, the young people who are reading Jordan Peterson, is there a crisis of meaning with them? Well, I understand that one of the books that Peterson has written are sort of guidelines, rules for life. And I wouldn't say that young people who are reading those books are necessarily in a crisis of meaning. It seems to me that we've all got very similar objectives in life, apart from survival. We want to prosper. We want to prosper and be happy. And the young people who are reading Peterson are hoping to do well in their careers. They're hoping to marry well. They're hoping to have children and prosper through their family and negotiate their way through life. They're not the ones who are going to a great work of art and looking for an objective, ultimate truth beyond it. This is something for philosophers to ponder over. So I don't really necessarily think that there is any crisis of meaning as such. It's very, very debatable. The people that I meet in my everyday life, I haven't particularly noticed that there's a crisis of meaning. They mostly are people who are trying to survive, do well in their jobs, trying to get in enough money to pay the bills, trying to prosper and trying to be happy and enjoy themselves. I don't particularly see that they've got any crisis of meaning at all. So you may disagree, but I'd be interested to know your views. Thank you very much for watching. I'll be back again soon with another video. Bye for now.